Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Hey, good morning. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. I know I come on here and you're like, oh my Lord, what is she so excited about? I am excited about life. I'm excited about God. I'm excited about the goodness of the Lord. I'm so excited about that. And you're like, okay, so what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? I am telling you right now, there is much to be excited about. It really is. There's much to be excited about because all you have to do is look around and see what's going on in the world right now. That's all you have to do. Look around and see what's going on in the world right now. You will find that things are just, it's madness. Look at our political sphere and what's happening. Look how people that you were once maybe best friends with, constituents, and that how everybody is separating. Everybody's going their own way. It's madness, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. I got into a conversation the other day. I got into a conversation the other day, and we were talking about um, therapy. We are talking about deliverance. We are talking about the different partisanships that's happening. We were talking about different belief systems. It was so much in that. And one conversation that really geared this message that we're talking about today, deliverance and therapy, is we realize that, well, I realized in having a conversation that sometimes individuals don't know. They don't know the difference. They don't know the difference in what we're talking about right now. Okay. And so the church has taken a position and everything is being just spiritualized, you know. And don't get me wrong, I am a firm believer of Jesus Christ, firm believer in God, firm believer in the Bible, firm believer that God is God. I am. But I do also understand, just like we're talking about everything in our world and our nation that's happening right about now. When I say our world, I'm talking about my little space, your little space, that we call my space, my world, my worldview. When I get to that place, I find out that I'm limited in my scope. I'm limited in what I can see because I am just looking at my worldview. This is what happens when we talk about therapy and we talk about deliverance. Okay. Not very often do we have pastors or ministers who can function in both because they've done the study and they've gone to school. They got the academics and the licensure and all of the professionalism behind them to speak to both scopes. So you can speak to what deliverance is and you can speak to what therapy is. So you know me, when I come on, I'm all about, when I talk about it, I'm all about talking about definitions and giving simplistic terminology on what's happening. So when you see the message, deliverance and therapy, some will say that you can't have both. Well, I was told that Jesus, everything is made by him, and there was nothing that was made that was not made by him. I just wanted to spit that out real quick. So if that's the case, that everything was made by him, and there was nothing that's made by him that was made, then that means that everything, the counsel that we receive, everything is made by him. So I'm going somewhere with this. I know it sounds a little confusing, but I'm going somewhere with this. Where am I going? Let's talk about what is deliverance. Let's talk about that. What is deliverance? Deliverance is an act of being set free from a spiritual bondage or oppression. Okay, let's stop right there. Deliverance is an act of being set free from spiritual bondage and oppression, often through prayer, fasting, and spiritual warfare. This is a little different than what I've talked about before. It is a supernatural intervention by God to break the power of the enemy over an individual's life. Let's go back. Deliverance. That's what we talk about, what deliverance is. Deliverance is the act of being set free from a spiritual bondage or oppression, often through prayer, fasting, and spiritual warfare. It is a supernatural intervention by God to break the power of the enemy over an individual's life. So, what is therapy? What's the big deal? What's the big deal? Because we're operating in the church under the auspice of delivery, right? So then we said, well, some people, it doesn't matter about the therapeutic community. All you have to do is come into the church, and then all these things will happen. Okay, we're going to be set free, but now we have to find out in the therapeutic world is a form, therapy, on the other hand, is a form of treatment that focuses on helping individuals work through the psychological and emotional issues through counseling, self reflection, and behavior modification. So, in these instances where we look in the Bible of deliverance, Jesus and his disciples, they cast out demons, right? And they healed the sick. So, deliverance is seen as a powerful and necessary tool to overcome spiritual strongholds and demonic influences in a person's life. Now, when you come to therapy, therapy is not explicitly, listen to me, is not explicitly mentioned in the Bible, but it is a very valuable tool in helping individuals work through emotional and psychological issues. This is why you hear some say, we're trying to provide therapy and pray. We're trying to provide therapy in a therapeutic community where deliverance should be taking place. Okay? We hear that. And it's a strange dichotomy, deliverance, therapy. But you have to know the difference between the two, because I have been in places where individuals are trying to cast something out, and the individual that's clinical depression. Clinical. All right. So now this individual needs to help, some tools to help them through the emotional and the psychological issues that they're having. Now we go back up to deliverance. Remember, deliverance is the act of being set free from spiritual bondage and oppression. All right. So someone would say, well, I suffer from anxiety. All right. So where's the anxiety? What's promoting the anxiety? What's the emotional or the psychological issue that we have to get to the root cause of that to help you understand what's pushing the anxiety attacks? And you know, as I say, attacks. What's going on with that? How can we achieve healing and wholeness in body, mind, and spirit? So when we look at the spirit, we're looking at deliverance, because that's the act of being set free from spiritual bondage and oppression. And it's going to take prayer, fasting, and spiritual warfare. You got to get into the spirit, man. So now we're talking about the body, and the mind. Okay, we're talking about the soul. So when we look at that, now to help achieve healing and wholeness in body, mind, and spirit, this is where it's important to seek guidance from God in all of it. All right, it's important to seek guidance from God and discernment from wise counsel when deciding upon which approach to seek in helping and healing. I know I took a minute to expound on that and to elaborate on that, because what we have to understand, we look at things, and when we come into the church, this is the temple, and we're talking about building the spirit man. And if there's an oppression or a level of bondage or a stronghold there, when we talk about respect the stronghold, things that a level of weakness that's happening, that's a whole different dynamic than I am dealing with anxiety or depression. I'm dealing with schizophrenia. Okay, there's a bipolar mechanism. I'm walking in that. Where is this coming from? How can I deal with that? So we have the therapeutic community. They take different approaches, but then once you are doing that and operating in there, let's look at the spiritual bondage or oppression that we're dealing with. So when we go on down there, you're seeking help. But before I go another further, I let me get to the scripture this morning. So when we talk about the concept of spiritual bondage and oppression, because that's when you're talking about deliverance. Anytime you hear someone says just spiritual bondage and oppression, they're talking about deliverance, a need for deliverance and healing, the need from deliverance and healing. So we get delivered out of this, but there's a healing concept that comes along with that. That Psalm 9, Jesus could, hey, when they tell the woman with the issue of blood, she could just be made whole. He said, your faith, daughter, has made you whole. The woman believes so, but she still had the issue. This is in a physical sense. She had the issue. She said, but if I could just touch the hem of his garment, if I could get that, she didn't have to talk to him. She just needed to get to the hem of his garment. And when she touched, he said, whoo, virtue went out of me. Virtue with that means something strong, a pulling was on. See, we're talking about there's a spiritual realm to this. There was a spiritual concept to this. There is oppression and all, and then deliverance has to take place. All of that, when we look at it. So now we come down, and this is what the Bible is talking about. And there are a couple of scriptures that I want to read that support the concept of spiritual bondage and oppression, as well as the need for deliverance and healing from these forces. I hope I'm not losing y'all. I just woke up after the conversations that I've been having. Said, you know what? Maybe we need to get an understanding of what deliverance is. Maybe we can get an understanding of what therapy is supposed to do. When we look at therapy and we put that in this place, we're going to compartmentalize a little bit. We have deliverance, we have therapy. And so let's go on. I want to come out of Ephesians 6:12 at the NIV. And it reads, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Let me read it again. For our struggle, all right, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. In the book of John, it said that the heavens suffered violence, and the violence taken by force. The heavens suffered violence, and the violence taken by force. We got to get and work some things and take it all back. We got to get out and work some things. We hear our colloquialisms when we say, you know what, like I got my foot on the devil, I got the devil under my feet. I have that. The devil's under my feet. And so what are we talking about here? What are we talking about when we say he's under our feet? That I'm going to walk this thing out. What are we talking about? Well, let's see. So when we're talking about he's under my feet, are we seeking deliverance? Are we seeking spiritual healing? What is it? Are we trying to get freedom? Are we trying to get peace? Are we trying to get wholeness? What are we trying to achieve? What are we doing? Okay, because so I'm going to go back up a little bit. It says deliverance is seen as a powerful tool for achieving spiritual freedom, healing, and restoration. It involves recognizing and renouncing any agreements or ties with negative spiritual forces and inviting the power of God to break their hold over one's life. We're talking about deliverance now. We're talking about deliverance. Deliverance is seen as a powerful tool for achieving spiritual freedom. He said nothing about the world of therapy. Spiritual freedom, healing, and restoration. So it's important for individuals experiencing spiritual bondage and oppression to seek help. Okay? It's important if you're experiencing spiritual bondage and oppression to seek help from a trained and experienced deliverance minister or a spiritual advisor who can guide you through the process of deliverance. This is a serious thing. It's a serious thing because you are going around popping pills and saying, I'm going to therapy, but it's just not moving. Things are not happening. Could it be that you're in a therapeutic community and you need to be delivered from some things? Could that be what's happening? Yeah, because if you can get to that place where you're operating, and you said this is a process. It is a process. It is a process. Because when your peace has been disturbed, that's a process. Okay? When you don't have any more joy, because it tells you this joy I have that the world didn't give it to me. I no longer have this level of joy. What's happening here? Why can't I experience freedom or peace or wholeness? What's going on right there? What's going on right there? What's going on right there? So let's get to when you say you being delivered from what? Spiritual bondage and oppression. What is that? Somebody is sitting there right there telling me, what in the world is she talking about? What do you mean by spiritual bondage and oppression? It is the state of being. This is why I like definitions. Because sometimes we just need to can you define that? If you can define it in the most simplistic of terms, I may understand. And with all that I get, and let me get an understanding, I may understand what it is you're talking about. I may. I hope. I'm stepping out in faith because I want to be delivered. I want to have some peace. I want to have some freedom. I'm tired of feeling like I got my back against the wall. I'm tired of getting up and I can't. I got this pattern of behavior and I feel trapped in it. Destructive patterns. What's going on? What's going on here? I'm going to tell you what's going on. Spiritual bondage and oppression. So this refers to the state of being under the control or influence of negative spiritual forces and entities. I said, all right, Doc, what that look like? It can manifest in various ways, such as feeling trapped in destructive patterns of behavior, feeling trapped. But you hear the term, just let go and let God. See, this ain't got nothing to do with the therapeutic community. This is right, just straight to just let go and let God. You may be holding on to something. You may be holding on to something because you just can't see yourself living without it. And you're oppressed. It's destructive. It's destructive. It's tearing down everything around you, but you're going to hold on to it. Let go and let God build up that spirit, man. So it can manifest in various ways, such as feeling trapped in destructive patterns of behavior, experiencing intense feelings of fear or anxiety, or being plagued by reoccurring negative thoughts and emotions. Spiritual bondage and oppression can also manifest as physical illness, relationship problems, or other forms of suffering. So, in the Christian faith, when you talk about the church, Christianity, Christ like peoples, us's, okay? In the Christian faith, spiritual bondage and oppression are what? Are often attributed to the influence of demonic forces or evil spirits. They speak to individuals separated from God. I want to talk about that. Separated from God and prevent them from living in freedom and wholeness. This can manifest as feelings of guilt, shame, or unworthiness, as well as what? Struggles with addiction, anger, or negative behaviors. Getting back to deliverance. What is deliverance? It's the process of being set free from spiritual bondage and oppression through prayer, fasting, and spiritual warfare. Only thing I'm saying right here, when we talk about deliverance, there are oftentimes some things that I need to be set free. And once I'm set free from that, I can go over here in the therapeutic world and I can get these tools to show me how to maintain this, how to walk this thing out, how to give me a new narrative, a new set of tools and resources that I need to work with. Someone can walk with me and walk this out. I have my spiritual advisor over here and I have my therapist. Sometimes, oftentimes, no, I can't say oftentimes. Let me take that back. Scratch that, okay? I can't take it back. Scratch that. I won't say oftentimes. But sometimes the spiritual advisor, the pastor, and the therapist sometimes are all one and the same. This is what I love about Christian counseling. As a therapist, and I'm gonna park right here for a minute. As a therapist, this is important for me to come out and talk about it because I often see, now I can say often because I see it, the struggle, and we're going over cognitive, how you think, cognitive behavior therapy. We're implementing that, and and you're sitting and you're hearing what's happening, and the person is, I'm feeling lost. There's a void here. That's something that I don't know how to fill this void. I don't know how to move forward. I don't know how to gain insight. So when we start talking about existentialism, we realize that, and when I say we, I'm talking about the therapeutic community. Many of us, we do have a values, our belief system is centered in Christianity. And I feel safe in saying that. And some will come and dispute that, and that's okay. So again, I'm talking about the worldview that I have and that I'm experiencing. And so when I look at that, and I say that now we're looking at individuals, spiritual bondage and oppression, and therapy. You have some that would say there's no difference. I beg to differ. I beg to differ. Because if I am saying that the individual who is hearing voices and having a full-blown conversation needs to be delivered, or is this just a manner of getting the right tools? And possibly it's a chemical imbalance. And so there may be some medication or, herbs that would help settle that down until the individual can get to a place where they begin to move in a healthy manner. Okay, so that is where this message is all about this morning. It was not hoop and hollering. In fact, I don't think I do. God just hasn't called me to do the hooping and the hollering, but to teach, but to teach so that you can get out, and instead of walking around with a lot of emotionalism, what you're walking around with is knowledge, awareness, so that you can gain that and begin to move into self-awareness and having a healthier self concept. So as we operate in these lanes, we find out that we begin to break these holes that we have over our lives because we get an understanding. And with all that getting, get an understanding. So that's one of the things that I was looking at. And so now he said, I want to get back up here. I'm trying to get back to my notes. It says, these forces seek to keep individuals separated from God and prevent them from living in freedom and wholeness. And what about the person who doesn't know God? What about the person who doesn't have a relationship with God? I would invite you to have that relationship. I would invite you to come into the realm of believing in something higher than yourself. Because see, a self-made person means that anything there's nothing to look up to. There's nothing to give hope to. There's nothing to lean into. There's nothing to embrace. There's no one to talk to but you. You are self-made. You're going to handle this all by yourself. This is happening with you. That's a whole lot, child. That's too much. That's oppression all by itself. That you've taken on the whole world. That your mom gave birth to you, and this is just you. I'm doing this thing. I don't need no help. I don't need any spiritual support. I don't need, I just don't need, I got it. I got it. And most people that feel like that is because they've never had it. They've never had this, the support system. And because they don't have the support system, they fear stepping into it, even believing that something like this could be possible. They fear having that level of vulnerability, to be that vulnerable, to step out and say, okay, somebody's going to help me. And because that has never happened, I am self-made. I pulled myself up. No, Doc, you didn't. No, you didn't. You didn't. And I will say that because I hold true to the belief system that I live, that I preach, that I share, to say that God is God. And he is a restorer. Okay? He's a healer. So when you begin to look into all of that, you understand that healing is a gradual and ongoing process. Okay? It involves inner work. It involves self-reflection. It involves forgiveness, and it involves spiritual growth. So when we talk about the context of deliverance and therapy, seeking help may involve what? Reaching out to a therapist or a counselor or professional guidance and dealing with our emotional issues. That's what therapy about, our emotional issues. Healing, on the other hand, involves the process of spiritual and emotional restoration. Okay? Emotional and spiritual restoration through prayer, spiritual warfare, and inner healing. How many of y'all go to therapy and they tell you, we want you to journal? I know it's one of my first things I tell an individual. I want you to journal. Do you journal? I want you to meditate. I want you to get some mindfulness grounding techniques. Because what are you doing? You're becoming one within yourself. You're talking about oneness now. And as you meditate and you reflect and you say, there's what's missing here. Well, what's missing is I'm talking with you and dealing with your emotional issues, right? And support. I'm giving you that support to deal with those emotional issues. Those things that happened, they were traumatic, and how to deal with it and keep it from taking a hold on you. So this is how we get some tools and we learn how to deal with that. That's the therapist's job. But the spiritual healer, or the pastor, on the other hand, when we begin to look at healing, now we're talking to the spirit man. And now we're talking about spiritual and emotional restoration. How? through prayer. Now we're praying. Now we're talking to a higher power. Now it's spiritual warfare. Now we're dealing with those things that try to separate us from God. And then we start beginning to talk about that inner healing. Ultimately, help is the first step towards achieving the healingness and the wholeness in the body. Asking for help, identifying and understanding that there is a problem. We talk about the stages of change, and we said before change could ever take place, we must first come out of pre-contemplation. And pre-contemplation is denial. It's not just a fancy word for denial. I've not even come to the place to say that I have a problem. So now I have to sit. And this is why when we come to therapy, okay, this is the therapeutic community. We come to therapy to deal with these emotions, and you're talking about what's happening in your life and these problematic behaviors. And you're saying that, but it's not a problem. It's a problem because we're sitting here talking about it. If it wasn't a problem, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it. But once you identify and that it is a problem, you move on over to contemplation. When I have to contemplate on something, I am meditating on something. I am praying about something. I'm getting into oneness with God. This is a spiritual move now. I'm getting and I'm moving and I'm talking and I'm praying and I'm believing that this for restoration. I'm trying to be delivered. I'm trying to be restored. Deliverance, restoration. Deliverance, restoration. If I go over to therapy, now you're giving me some tools on how I can be balanced, someone that I can balance some things off of, someone that helps me process this, someone helps me to go on and get the tools that's needed, that when I get a little agitated, and so deliverance tells me that I understand this and I've been delivered from this. Now therapy tells me I'm going to walk on through this and I need a few extra tools to get me from point A to point B. I hope this made sense to somebody this morning, because I was a little challenged in bringing it forward, because I was like, yeek, I keep seeing some stuff. I keep seeing some things. And I keep hearing individuals like, you just need to be delivered. No, there's some things that emotional trauma and things that have pushed us in a place, and we need to find a spot, a place to heal. Okay, to get that healing going on. So when we do that, they say, "Oh no, that's deliverance." No, if I was sexually assaulted and I'm having a hard time dealing with that, I need someone to help me deal with these emotions. I need someone to help me, give me some tools that when these intrusive thoughts come and they want to take place, on how to push that back. I need somebody to help me understand my self-worth and my self-esteem, and that particular act doesn't define me. All right. So that I don't, when you start talking about deliverance, that's not that spiritual warfare, or that didn't separate me from God. That didn't separate me from God because of what somebody else did to me, and I'm having a hard time. If I was a product of child maltreatment from my youth, growing up, that didn't separate me from God. I'm going to therapy to help me learn how to deal with the hurt, and I can begin to move forward. Give me some tools. So if we're understanding, I just really wanted to come on so we could honestly get an understanding what's happening. So when I go seeking for help or reaching out, I'm just dealing with emotional and psychological issues. So now we said seeking help is a proactive step towards addressing and resolving problems in one's life. Healing, on the other hand, refers to the process of becoming whole and restored in body, mind, and spirit. It involves addressing the root causes of emotional and spiritual wounds and finding resolution in peace Healing can be a gradual and ongoing process that is always going to involve inner work, self reflection, forgiveness, and spiritual growth. So you're saying, what are you saying? In context, let me bring this to a close. In context of deliverance and therapy, seeking help may involve reaching out to a therapist or a counselor and dealing with emotional issues. Healing, healing is dealing with what? Involves the process of spiritual and emotional restoration through prayer, spiritual warfare, and inner healing. Ultimately, we have to decide to take a step. We have to decide to ask for help. We have to identify that there is a problem. We have to move forward and engage in the process of healing and transformation. Healing and transformation. Deliverance and therapy. Healing and transformation. Healing, deliverance, therapy, transformation. Healing and transformation. Deliverance and therapy. There is a difference. I hope y'all have found this to be helpful today. It wasn't something that, I wanted to say that, oh, we got to have a Bible study about that. But it is something that I just wanted to come on: healing and transformation, deliverance and therapy, healing and transformation. Let's get healed first. Then we start going through the transformation. If there's an area that needs to be delivered, let's get that going on first. Get the therapy to help you with the transformation and begin to move forward. So I want to leave you with a couple of scriptures here. Luke 4:18 and 19. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me. He has anointed you. He's anointed me, Lolita Gilmore Randall. Okay? He has anointed me. He has anointed you, whatever your name is, put your name in there, to proclaim the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery the sight of the blind, to set the captives free, or the oppressed free. So this is where Jesus, he emphasizes his mission to bring freedom and deliverance to those who are oppressed and in bondage. Freedom and deliverance, healing and transformation, freedom and deliverance, healing and transformation, healing and transformation. No, we don't see therapy in the Bible, but healing and transformation. The deliverance takes place. Jesus was doing it, and then he would sit with them. Resist the devil. James 4 and 7 tells us, submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. What was he doing? Encouraging believers to resist the influence of the enemy and to draw near to God for strength and protection. Corinthians 10:3 and 5. For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that set itself against the knowledge of God. And we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. What are we saying here? This speaks to spiritual warfare that believers engage in, and the power of God to break strongholds and bring freedom and healing. Freedom and healing. Restoration, transformation. Freedom and healing. Deliverance and therapy. Two different things. But oftentimes we need both, and that's okay. So maybe, just maybe, in this message, you will drop the stigma when we talk about therapy and our mental health. Just maybe we can drop it, the negative stereotype that's been associated with it. Just maybe we can do that. You tell somebody something about going to therapy. Ah, no, 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 no. Okay, okay. I'm just gonna pray about it. Well, okay. Well, and that's fine. That's fine because where the encouragement and guidance for believers seeking freedom from spiritual bonding and oppression. That's fine because you're seeking the freedom from spiritual bondage and oppression. So the deliverance, then the transformation. The deliverance, then the transformation. Okay? That's all I came to tell you today. The deliverance and the transformation. So understand that there is a difference. It really is between deliverance and therapy, but they coexist. They coexist because you got people who have been delivered from the oppression and they haven't learned how to live with it. They quote every scripture in the Bible because now you're hiding behind religion. And that's what you know. Will you be made whole today? Both deliverance and therapy can be used together, should be used together to help achieve healing and wholeness. Healing and wholeness in body, in mind, and in spirit. That's all I came by to tell you today. It really is. So, y'all continue to have a great day. Continue to be blessed in the Lord. I'm going to continue to come on here and talk to you just to teach. Just to teach. We got a whole lot of preaching going on. We got a whole lot of emotionalism going on. Are we learning anything? Are we learning any practical applications on how to live this life on this earth, in this world? Are we doing that? How can we reach the highways and the byways? How can we reach our children if they can't understand what it is that we're saying or talking about? How can we do that? How? How? So it's nothing wrong with if your child says, I think I need to go to therapy, don't beat them down and say, no, what you need to be is delivered. You need to be delivered from that alcohol. You need to be delivered from them drugs, which they do. Don't get me wrong. But let me tell you something. They can go into an addiction treatment center if that's where they're going. And do you know the tenets of Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous is built on the tenets of the Bible? They're taught in the big blue book to think about and consider a higher power. That's what these groups, everything that we talk about. Now, APA can take it, American Psychological Association, and say, it's scientific, yeah. But when you really begin to look at some of the theoretical approaches, it's all coming out the word. Don't get me wrong. But now God, just like he used Paul to write the better half of the New Testament, because we have to evolve. We have to know that he's doing a new thing. And so deliverance and therapy, they can walk hand in hand. And some of us need that to happen. And we can't be ashamed. We have to stop this. I had an individual tell me the other day, I want to go to therapy, but if I go to therapy, my pastor told me that I don't have enough faith. Stop that. Stop that. That is a desperate need. For some people, they have a desperate need to come in and sit down and talk with someone about whether it's behavior modification, whether it's just the fact that I have some emotional struggles and some healings that I need to deal with, but I'm afraid to come into therapy because I've been told I don't have enough faith. That's not true. That's not true. So if you need to talk to a counselor, then you go and you talk to that counselor. You reach out to someone, okay? You can talk to your pastor and you can have your therapist. And some of us are both. If you want to hit me up, DM me, and we can talk about this too. To get you in the right direction, to get you connected with somebody. And you don't have to be afraid of that. You don't have to be afraid of talking to a therapist. You don't have to be afraid of it. That's not going to negate your relationship with God. In fact, I'm inclined to believe it's going to help it all the more. Because with all that getting, get an understanding. Y'all be blessed today. We love you. We'll continue to come back here. Be back here next week. Okay? In fact, well, no, I'm not putting that out yet. But we'll be back here next week. All right. So y'all have a beautiful Sunday. This election is coming up. I won't tell nobody who to vote for, but I will say, exercise your voice. Exercise your voice. And that's what voting is. The voice occupying. Voice occupying. Voice occupying. Total. Total equality. That's what voting does. It occupies total equality, whether you're going to have it or you don't. So, what you consider to be equality, vote on it. Use your voice to occupy. All right? Peace. Bye, y'all.